Welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're going to look at test case templates
Ooh.
and kind of the how and why of it
Oh,
all.
yeah.
And for this, we're going to be referencing an article called Test Case Template, Download Sample Excel.
Okay.
And I think it'll be fun to kind of go through it
Sounds good.
and see what we can learn.
It's interesting how much work goes into
Yeah.
making sure that the software we use every single day actually works.
Yeah, it's easy to just assume that everything's just going to work perfectly.
You just expect it to work.
Yeah, and then you get frustrated when it doesn't. But there's
Yeah.
a whole
Yeah.
army of people working behind the scenes to make sure that
A lot of people.
it does work.
Yeah. That's where our test case templates come in.
Right.
They're like the blueprints for quality assurance,
Uh-huh.
and they help the team catch all those little bugs.
Right, and it's important because like a bug
Yeah.
can be just a small inconvenience or it can be a really serious thing.
Exactly.
Like especially with banking or something like that.
Yeah, the impact of software bugs can be huge,
Yeah.
affecting everything from financial stability to personal safety.
So let's define it.
Yeah.
What is a test case template?
Think of it as a structured checklist that guides the design and the execution of tests
Okay.
for a piece of software.
Right.
And they're really interesting because they can be adapted to fit different software development methodologies.
Oh, so you're talking about
Yeah.
like agile waterfall and all that.
Yeah, whether a team is working in a fast-paced, agile environment
Right.
or a more traditional waterfall model,
Okay.
those core principles
Yeah.
of a well-structured test case
Right.
are essential.
So it transcends the
Yeah.
different types of development.
And that's where the real value lies.
Okay.
A well-crafted template will ensure that tests are repeatable,
Yeah.
traceable,
Uh-huh.
and effective at catching bugs.
So it's not just like a random document.
No.
It's a strategic tool.
Absolutely.
Now, the article breaks down all the different fields, and I have to say it's kind of overwhelming when you first look at it.
It is a lot.
Is there a way we can kind of categorize these things?
You know, I like to group the fields into different categories
Yeah.
just to make sense of the overall structure.
Okay.
You've got identification, which is about labeling and organizing each test.
Okay.
And this would include things like the test case ID,
Right.
which gives each test its unique identifier,
Okay.
and then the module,
Yeah.
which pinpoints exactly what part of the software is being tested.
So it's like a name tag and like what department it's in.
Exactly.
Okay.
Then we move on to execution,
Uh-huh.
and this is where we get down to the nitty-gritty of how a test is carried out.
Okay.
And this would include things like test steps,
Right.
test data,
Huh.
preconditions.
Okay, so like test steps are like what the actual tester is going to do.
Exactly.
That's by step.
Think of it as a recipe.
Yeah.
Each step needs to be clear and detailed so that anyone can follow it and get the same result.
Okay, and then test data is like the ingredients
Correct.
of the recipe.
Exactly.
And then the preconditions are like,
The preconditions are like setting up your kitchen.
right. You have to have everything ready to go.
Yeah, before you can start cooking.
Give me a real world example.
Let's say we're testing the password reset functionality
Yeah.
on a website.
Yeah.
A precondition might be that the user has already registered an account
Right.
and provided a valid email address.
Because you can't reset a password.
Right. You can't reset something
No, you don't have one.
that doesn't exist.
All right, so we've got identification.
Okay.
We've got execution.
Yes.
What's the next?
Results.
Okay.
And this is where we capture what happened during the test
Yeah.
and determine if the software passed or failed.
And the key fields here
Hmm.
are expected results,
Yeah.
actual results,
Uh-huh.
and status.
So the expected results are kind of our hypothesis of what's going to happen.
And then we compare that
Nice.
to the actual results,
Yeah.
which is what happened when we ran the test.
Right. And then you determine pass or fail.
Exactly.
Okay. It's like
If-
it's just like a
Exactly.
science experiment.
But instead of beakers and test tubes,
Yeah.
it's code and clicks.
Exactly.
So a fail isn't always a bad thing.
No.
It just means that there's something,
It's an opportunity to learn.
yeah.
It's an opportunity to see where the software
Yeah.
is not meeting the expectations.
So it can drive.
Exactly.
It drives
But
quality and improves
that's the whole process.
Absolutely.
So it's not just about finding
Yeah.
bugs. It's about improving the overall
Exactly.
quality.
And the beauty of it.
Is that it can be applied to any type of software,
Right.
from simple mobile apps
Yeah.
to very complex enterprise systems.
So now you mentioned that there are different levels of detail.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you can go too granular.
That's a great question.
Like, can you bog it down with,
Yeah, you definitely can.
Too much.
You can bog it down with too much information.
Yeah.
And you can also not have enough information.
Right.
There's definitely a sweet spot when it comes to the level of detail.
So it's finding that
Yeah,
balance.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where experience and judgment
Right.
comes in.
Okay.
A skilled tester knows how to strike that balance
Okay.
and create test cases that are comprehensive but not overly burdensome.
So it's not just blindly filling out a form.
No.
You got to kind
You have to
of
understand
their brain.
the purpose behind each field
Right.
and use that knowledge to
Nice.
create really good tests.
Well, you've opened up a whole new world to me.
I'm glad to hear that.
I didn't really even think about this before.
It's really a hidden world of quality control that I think is often overlooked.
Yeah. And it's so important because it affects every single one of us.
It does. It affects all of our digital lives.
So now let's move on to the optional
Let's-
fields.
Yeah, these are like additional tools
Okay.
to our detectives kit.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into it after a quick word from our sponsors. All right, so we're back, and we're going to talk about some of these optional fields.
Okay.
Now, the first one that jumps out to me is Link Defect ID.
Okay, yeah, this is all about connecting the dots between testing and development.
Okay, so like if a test fails, this is how they track it back to the developers.
Imagine a tester found a bug where a button on the website didn't work.
Yeah.
They can use the Link Defect ID field to create a direct link to that bug in the bug tracking system
Okay.
where the developers can see the failed tests.
So there's no
Yeah.
mystery of like,
There's no playing detective.
yeah, where did this come from?
Exactly. And that efficiency is critical,
Yep.
especially when you're working on large, complex projects
Right.
with multiple teams involved.
And then we've got keywords test type.
Yes.
Is this where you specify like, is this a functionality test?
Exactly.
Security, performance.
Okay. It's like tagging files,
Okay.
so you can easily find them later.
Yeah.
Using keywords, you can filter and analyze test cases,
Okay.
see how many tests are focused on specific areas, and identify potential gaps in coverage.
So you can make sure you're not
Exactly.
skimping on security.
You're testing all the critical areas.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
Now there's also requirements, and that seems like it's tying it back to like the original
It is.
design doc.
It ensures that your tests are aligned
Right.
with the intended functionality of the software.
Yeah.
Think of it like checking your map before you set off on a journey. You want to make sure you're heading in the right direction.
Okay.
So if the requirement says the software needs to handle 1,000 users simultaneously,
Yeah.
the test case better check for that.
Yeah. Make sure it actually does that.
Exactly. You're making sure that the software delivers what it's supposed to.
Then we've got references attachments. So like for really
Right.
complicated things you could attach, like diagrams and stuff.
Let's say you're testing a feature that involves a complicated workflow or a series of steps.
Uh-huh.
You can attach diagrams, screenshots, even video recordings to the test case
Right.
to provide clear instructions.
Okay, so it's almost like
Yeah.
footnotes
It's like adding footnotes
to a research paper.
to a research paper, exactly.
And then we have automation.
Yes,
Is this like, can this be automated by a
it could
computer?
be. That's right. And this field is becoming more important
Yeah.
as automation plays a larger role in
Right.
software testing.
Yeah, because some of those tests can be really
Yes,
tedious and repetitive.
exactly. Automation frees up human testers to
Yeah.
focus on the more complex exploratory testing.
So it's not replacing them. It's
Exactly. It's all about making them more efficient.
more efficient.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's not replacing humans. It's
Yeah.
making them better.
Right.
It's giving them...
And then we've got this catch-all custom fields.
Yes. This is where you can add any project-specific details.
So if you're working on a mobile game, you could have a field that's like
Exactly.
device compatibility.
Exactly. Or if you're working on a financial application,
Right.
you might have regulatory compliance.
So it's really just about tailoring it
Exactly. It's all
That's
about
what's doing it.
tailoring the template
to each specific.
to fit the unique needs of each project.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we've got all these different fields, and we've talked a lot about the technical side of it.
Yes.
But what about the human side?
That's a great point.
What makes it great?
Yeah, a good test case template
What makes it great?
is only as good as the people who use it.
Yeah.
So what makes a great software tester?
Yeah.
Well, first and foremost, a great tester needs a keen eye for detail.
Okay.
They need to be able to spot those inconsistencies
Ah.
and discrepancies that other people might miss.
So like a detective
Exactly.
looking for clues.
It's like being a detective
Oh.
searching for clues at a crime scene.
And they also have to be really patient.
Yes, and along with the attention to detail,
Yeah.
They need to be incredibly patient.
Because it can be a very tedious process.
Testing can be a repetitive process.
Right.
And it can take time to track down those elusive bugs.
So what else besides patience and a good eye for detail?
I think creativity is crucial as well.
Okay.
A great tester needs to be able to think outside the box.
Yeah.
To anticipate ways in which the software might fail.
Right. So they have to almost think like a malicious user would.
And that requires a certain level of empathy.
Yeah. Put yourself in their shoes.
And imagination.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the user's perspective
Right.
and anticipating their needs.
Okay. So it's a blend of
It is.
It's
a blend of
right.
technical skills and soft skills.
Right.
And those soft skills are becoming increasingly important
Yeah.
as software development becomes more collaborative
Uh-huh.
and user-centered.
So you're not just a code monkey. You have to be able to
Exactly.
work with other people.
And those qualities are essential,
Yeah.
whether you're using a simple spreadsheet
Right.
or a sophisticated software suite.
It's more about the mindset.
It is. It's about having the right mindset.
So now I want to get into how this is used
Okay.
in the real world.
Okay, let's do it.
So we've talked a lot about the theory,
Yes.
but now let's look at
Let's look at some real-world examples
some real-world examples.
and see how those principles
Right.
we've discussed.
Okay, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're back and ready to see how these test case templates are used in the real world.
Yeah, it's amazing how adaptable these templates are.
Yeah.
You can use them for simple mobile apps or complex financial systems.
So give me an example.
Okay.
How would it differ if you're testing like a mobile game
Okay.
versus a banking system?
All right, so let's start with the mobile game.
Okay.
We're probably dealing with a much faster development cycle, frequent updates, and a huge emphasis on the user experience.
Right, because it has to be fun
Yeah.
and engaging.
Exactly. So our test cases would focus on things like gameplay mechanics.
Right, make sure they work, right?
Yeah. Responsiveness.
Yeah,
Visual appeal.
right. And it has to work on all the different devices.
Exactly. We don't want players getting frustrated
Yeah.
with lag or glitches.
And then with a mobile game, you also have to worry about the monetization.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Because a lot of mobile games are free to play
Yeah.
with in-app purchases.
Yeah.
So we need to test those features
Make sure they're working right.
thoroughly.
Yeah, and that people can't, like, hack them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We don't want any bugs that could be exploited
Right.
to give players an unfair advantage.
And you don't want bugs that prevent people from spending money.
Exactly. A bug in the payment system could be a disaster
Yeah.
for a mobile game company.
What about security for something like that?
Well, it depends on the game,
Yeah.
but security is always a consideration.
Yeah.
We'd want to make sure that user data is protected,
Yeah.
especially if the game involves personal information like
Yeah.
email addresses or social media connections.
Your test case template would have to cover gameplay, monetization,
Exactly.
security.
It covers all those bases,
Okay.
plus basic functionality.
Now, what about a banking system?
Okay, so now with a core banking system,
Yeah.
reliability and data integrity are absolutely critical.
That's people's money.
We're talking about people's finances.
Right.
So any errors
Yeah.
or security breaches
Yeah, that's a big deal.
could have disastrous consequences.
So the testing there has to be
It's super thorough. The test case templates would need to be very thorough,
Yeah.
covering every possible scenario.
Right.
We'd be looking at transaction processing,
Yeah.
data validation,
Mhm.
security protocols, disaster recovery.
What if the power goes out?
Exactly what happens if there's a power outage.
Yeah.
What if a user tries to withdraw more money than they have?
Right. Or deposit a negative amount.
Yes, we need to make sure the system can handle anything that's
Uh-huh.
thrown at it.
So that testing process is probably a lot longer.
It is.
Yeah.
It's much longer and more rigorous than for a mobile game.
Yeah.
We might have multiple rounds of testing, including things like alpha testing, beta testing,
Right.
and even user acceptance testing.
We're like actual users.
Exactly, where actual bank employees or customers can try out the system
Before it launches to the public.
before it goes live.
So it's cool to see how you can use the same basic principles
It is.
and just tailor it to...
It really highlights the importance of having a structured approach,
Yeah.
no matter what you're testing.
So what's the future of
Oh, okay, that's a great question.
software testing?
Well, one trend that's really gaining momentum is automation.
Okay.
As software becomes more complex,
Yeah.
it becomes much more difficult to
Yeah.
test everything manually.
So computers are going to be doing a lot more of the testing.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
But it's not about replacing human testers.
Right.
It's about empowering them
Yeah, to focus on the more
to focus on the more complex
exact stuff.
and nuanced aspects of testing. So
Okay.
things like creativity, critical thinking,
Right.
those soft skills we discussed earlier.
Those will be more important
Yeah, they'll become even more valuable
as the computers take over
as automation takes over
the boring stuff.
the more repetitive tasks.
Yeah.
Another trend we're seeing is the use of AI,
Oh, wow.
machine learning.
How are they using that?
Well, AI can be used to analyze vast amounts of test data,
Okay.
identify patterns,
Uh-huh.
and even predict potential defects.
So it's like
Yeah, like having a
super detective.
superpowered detective assistant
Yeah.
helping to anticipate and prevent problems.
So it makes the whole process fun.
Exactly. AI is like a force multiplier for software testing,
Yeah.
making the process faster, more efficient, and more effective.
Well, this has been a really interesting
Yeah.
deep dive.
It has. I learned a lot.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
And, even if you never write a test case template yourself,
Yeah.
I think understanding these concepts can help you be a better consumer of technology.
It's like the more you know.
The better decisions you can make.
The more you know,
Yeah.
the better decisions you can make.
All right, so that wraps up our deep dive on
That's it.
test case templates.
That's right.
I hope you enjoyed it,
Thanks for having me.
and we'll see you next time
Until next time.
for another deep dive.